Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on how to use social media effectively. We're going to get started. I can see there's quite a few people online, which is great, and I'm absolutely delighted that we've got Martin Hogg from Citizen Coaching, who will be facilitating today's webinar, and you might also be able to see his image on the screen. I think he was just giving us a wave there. Martin has been a mentor and supporter for Unlimited for about 4 years now, and more recently has also become an Unlimited Big Venture Challenge winner. So he might share some of that with you. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over the controls to Martin, and in a couple of minutes you will hear his voice and see his screen. So thank you, sit back and enjoy today's webinar.
Very much for that introduction, Julie, and it's great to be with you this lunchtime. Let me just take care of this little bit of technology here. We don't want that showing up all the way through. Let's just take that down. Here we go, we're back. And I guess I fell into social media as a little bit of an accident, really, whilst running Citizen Coaching. We're a social enterprise, a community interest company, and we started back in 2005. And in the time that we've actually been running the social enterprise, social media has grown phenomenally. And it was one of those things, setting up the enterprise as on a shoestring, or on a very strict budget when we started off. I quickly found that it was a way of getting our message out, and it was a way of engaging with other people very, very effectively. And so the big question for today, I thought, would be, let's have a look at social media from a terms of our return on investment for the amount of time that people are actually spending on social media. Are you getting something out of this? Now, you'll see a little chat box on the right hand side of the screen, and any time you want to ask a question, and we can pick up on these at the end of the presentation. But to start with, I'm going to go through some slides, share some of the experiences, and tell you a few of the stories. And as I said, one of the big things that has changed since 2005 has been the massive growth in social media. And as you see things as they are today, it's quite incredible to know that every minute of every day that 48 hours of content are uploaded onto YouTube. There's 347 new WordPress blogs published, over 571 new websites created. There's over 3,000 images added to Flickr and shared on Instagram, and a huge number of Tumblr posts, so over 27,000. Now this is every single minute of every single day. So it's important to get social media right, but what are the opportunities? And over the next few minutes that I'm going to share with you just some of the things we found, but this is very much a practical use of social media. So let me tell you first a little bit about Citizen Coaching itself and how we use social media. When we first started the social enterprise, as I said, we were very much on a budget, and for me, I didn't even know I was working in a social enterprise when I started it back in 2005. I'd spent over 20 years working in corporate environment, and just kind of felt I wanted to do something a little bit different. And initially, when I first started, it was all about spending 2 days a week doing some consulting work and doing some coaching, and the rest of the time working in my local community, and I was quite happy doing that for the first 2 or 3 years by myself. But as demand grew for the services I had, I was thinking, well, how do I actually scale up this business? And we were getting bits of work in via the website being up and being used effectively. We were sharing videos about the sort of things that I was doing, just really quite crudely shot looking back on it now with the technology available at the time, but it seemed to actually get the message going. So one of the things that we did within Citizen Coaching was try to actually connect with people. And we use LinkedIn, I think, as the most effective of all the social media. So if you want to know where social media can actually take you, then this slide that I've got at the moment, which is a slightly more orange version of myself, it's really where possibly it could go. The thing that Citizen Coaching really specialises in is in helping people break the negative cycles in their lives. And one of those things is around helping people who have anger issues. And what's very prominent across all our social media channels and all the work we do is that we specialise with an anger management service. And the Big Venture Challenge this year, we're hoping is going to help us be able to train over 100 people across the UK to replicate what we've actually done. And a lot of it has been based on being there when people come looking for help. So what social media does is it puts you in front of people when they're actively searching for the thing that you provide. So in our case, we were providing anger management. So when somebody was looking for anger management and they were typing that into Google, or they were looking for anger management videos on YouTube, then we were actually showing up. And that was kind of important because it was a very low-cost way of doing it. Now, my time wasn't free, but the actual cost of using LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube is free. You can take up some advertising options, and we could even talk about some questions about the effectiveness of that maybe a little bit later on. But if you can remember back just over a year ago when the football player Luis Suarez bit somebody on the football field the first time, then it was all over the media. And one of the things that the BBC were interested in doing was having somebody to appear on breakfast news the next morning. And what they did was to look in LinkedIn, and by searching in LinkedIn for anger management, they came across me. They called me up and asked me a few questions about what my view was on Luis Suarez and him biting players. So I just had to check out a little bit about who he was, not being the greatest of football fans, and was able to talk about some ideas around it. And sure enough, next thing you knew, I was on the train off to Manchester to do my little stint on breakfast news. Nice hotel for the night, and in the morning sort of got picked up, put into makeup, freshly orange to look bright on the sofa next to Bill and Suzanne, and sure enough, my 5 minutes of fame came and went very, very quickly, and before you knew it, I was back in a taxi, still looking very orange, but released onto the streets of Manchester to find my way back to Birmingham. So a lot of what was going on there was about just being in the right place when people come looking. So what would the right place look like for you? Maybe the service you're offering is some kind of one-to-one advice service. Maybe you provide money advice to people, and maybe that money advice is you provide it to the people of Doncaster. So what you might want to do then is make videos about the theme of money advice, Doncaster, help with debt, Doncaster. Or in our picture here where we've got two people doing some counselling and coaching work, then you might put in there coaching for young people in Bournemouth. And what you would do is you would theme your social media channels and your website all around those particular phrases. So when somebody types into Google what services are there for young people in Bournemouth, hopefully you would come up, but you wouldn't just come up as your website, you'd also come up with maybe tweets that you sent from Twitter, your Facebook page, and any videos that you've made on YouTube as well. A lot of people have got an appetite for what we're doing just now, using GoToWebinar, using GoMeeting and Skype, Google Hangouts to actually learn in a new way. And one of the things that we developed was an online anger management program called myangercoach.co.uk, and there's currently about 200 people, I think, actively enrolled on that program. And like the chap here, laying back, watching the anger management program through this animated video on the TV. So there's lots of ways that things are changing. People are feeling a lot more comfortable with technology, and whether it be in their living room or whether it be on a mobile device. And what happened for us here, and it was quite by accident at first, is that Citizen Coaching, as I said, we're very much about a well-being business. So we're about breaking the negative cycles in people's lives, whether they're people in recovery from addiction, whether they're people who would need counselling for depression or anxiety. And what we do as a result is provide a variety of well-being services. But what we found was that the social media and website work that we were doing was actually becoming its own little social enterprise. And so about 4.5 years ago we established Citizen Click, and Citizen Click, under the direction of the team there of Nate and James and Matt, actually make websites for people, provide social media courses, and actually do social media for people. So you can see some of our team in the video there. So sorry, in the picture there. So basically, what happened for us is social media actually became its own little money generating part of Citizen Coaching CIC, and we go out and advise on lots and lots of community projects, as well as tender for commercial websites in the marketplace against the private sector. So where would you start with all this? The whole thing might seem a little bit overwhelming. There's always new kinds of social media coming along, and at the bottom of the slide here you can see the circles of some of them when we put the slides together, and some of those don't even exist anymore. So there's always new social media coming, and there's always new old social media going, and there's a few that I think are really worth looking at. So when it comes to planning your social media, then best to stick to some of the core ones, unless there's a particular niche in your type of work. So the concept of writing on walls has been around a long time, right since this little chap was writing on cave paintings a long time ago. But all the time, more and more people are actually connecting through social media. And things are moving from the phone that we used to have at home to the smartphone. So many people who I know don't even have a home landline anymore. People are moving from the conventional mail to the email, from news to reading newspapers on their Kindle devices and on their smartphones and tablets, and actually going from socializing in the real world into socializing online using Twitter and Facebook, LinkedIn, amongst others. So technology is very much shifting all the time, and what I discovered was that when it comes to social media, it kind of fitted a nice framework, and what some people said is actually Martin took all the fun out of social media with this framework. But what I was trying to always get to do was to have a look at, was social media a complete waste of time, or was it actually bringing us in business? And that's when I kind of came across this rather familiar framework that some of you will use for other parts of your organizational development, but actually it works very well with social media as well. So let's start off with some examples. So let's start off with the inputs. So with the inputs, we started to look at, well, how can we effectively manage our social media? We could allocate it to somebody and their job, or we could maybe train some volunteers who could work remotely with social media, and in return we'll teach them everything we know. And in return for putting all those inputs in, hopefully we're going to get some outputs. And I've got a worked example of how this worked with one of our more recent conferences, where I'm going to be sharing the kind of the good, the bad and the ugly of the marketing strategy for that. So as a result of having all these people in place, all busily away doing the social media, what were the outputs that we got from that? So sure enough, we had a busy office of people tweeting and doing Facebook and what was happening. But actually the next part of it, as many of you will be familiar with, is the outcomes. What actually happened as a result of having all these people busily away doing all this social media work? What were the outcomes of this? And finally, with all that said and done, what was the impact with all of that? So when it came to the crunch, was it worth doing all this, or were we better off not have actually gone to the effort? And I think a lot of social media can be a waste of time in a sense from a business or organisational point of view, and it is kind of supposed to be fun. So if you want to use social media just in the way of having fun, connecting with people, having a private Facebook page and sharing photos, and I read a real interesting thing last week that 2% of all the photographs taken since the beginning of time are currently on Facebook, which is a bit of a scary statistic. And so if you want to do that, that's absolutely fine. But when we're going to be actually spending time within an organisation, then I think we're going to have a slightly different approach to it. So let's have a look at the actual nitty-gritty of it all. And I'm going to use as an example a recent event that we ran in Birmingham, which was a conference for counsellors. Now, in the end, this was a big success, and we had, I think, between 35 to 40 counsellors absolutely sort of enjoying a great day. And it was our one day a year where we very much get all the counsellors together that we're working with, and those from further afield that have been on courses throughout the country, and we bring them to Birmingham and talk a little bit about what's going on for counselling, what's happening next. And we involved quite a few social enterprises in that, and some good friends in there that were Forward for Life and Heather from Cloud's End, and it's great to see Humanima, CIC. So lots of sort of other social enterprises involved. But let's apply the formula here that we've just talked about and apply it to print advertising. So we took an advert out in quite an expensive form of advertising this. It was £600 for an advert in one of the counsellor trade journals, and it's one of the only ways of getting through to counsellors. So the input was, here was our £600 we put in. We designed an advert in-house, fortunately, because we've got Nate with his Photoshop there. So we designed this advert in-house. It cost £600 to put in the advert. It looked great. Out came the magazine. The phone rang. We answered lots of calls. And what actually happened? Well, 7 people booked, and we took £700. Now, on the surface of it, you would say, okay, well, that's not bad. You put an advert in for 600 and you got 700. Well, not so great, I have to say to you, because by the time we've fed those people and spent our time putting the advert together, really to be up £100 wasn't much. So we could say that we did little more than break even with that. So the impact of print advertising in this case is we covered our money, but it wasn't great. But look what happened when we spent some money actually spending time on social media. So this is what you could do with your print advertising at the moment, or any advertising you're doing. You could say, okay, well, I'm currently spending £500 on this particular guidebook or this particular leaflet distribution, or I might be spending this kind of money on a directory entry or advertising around a map, any of these kind of things. Ask yourself, well, how many people did it actually bring to our service? Or how many people? Now, the only way you can do that is when people first enter the service and you're doing whether it just be a casual keeping a casual list, or whether it actually be during a baseline interview when someone signs up for your service, ask them, how did you hear about us? How did you know to call us? And then you'll know people may have heard you from referral. Well, word of mouth, that's positive, that's free, isn't it? How did they hear about you? Did they see your listing in the Yellow Pages? Probably these days a lot of people don't even get a paper directory delivered to their home. So we need to be asking people, how did you get to hear about us? So let's see what happened with social media. Well, on social media we spent £300, so we spent 30 hours of time with paid people to complete the social media. They put a campaign together where for 30 hours we had a number of tweets. We did some targeted work looking at Facebook. We shared some videos and teasers and pictures on LinkedIn and Flickr. So our inputs were the £300. Our outputs were, again, we engaged with people, we got the message out, and we created a huge amount of publicity. And then when people called, we said, and how did you hear about the event? And they said, we actually saw it on Twitter, or my friend saw it on Twitter, or I'm not quite sure, Marjorie saw it somewhere on the net. And guess what happened? 7 people booked, and we took £700. But this time the input on it was £300. So I was really pleased with that impact, because what we could do next is, well, maybe if we were to spend £3,000 on 300 hours social media, we'd bring in £7,000 and 70 people might book. So we might actually be ambitious enough to say that we'll run a much bigger event next time. Now, I just have to say, a couple of the people who actually booked, having seen us on social media, said, well, actually, I was umming and ahhing. I remember seeing the adverts in the Counsellor magazine, and then when I started seeing the tweets and your LinkedIn, and I started seeing a little bit about what was going to be in the conference, then I then booked. So the interesting thing was that what social media did in that case was actually brought people closer to the sale. They'd seen the advert, but in that moment in time didn't really feel that they would book the conference. But as they got to hear more about the conference, then they decided they would phone and book. So you could argue, how do we score that? Do we score it as 1 for the return on investment for social media, or 1 on the social return investment for print advertising? So I'll let you decide that one. So that's all well and good. I've been talking for 25 minutes now. Well, how do you actually do it? And the slides that I'm going to go on to now have got a lot more writing on than I'd normally put on an event like this. But because those are going to be turned into a handout for you that Julie, I believe, is going to send you, then you'll be able to come back and refer to these at a later stage. So I'm not going to read out everything that's on the slide, but just give you an overview, because where we really need to start from at this point is to be looking at a customized strategy for your organization. So think about sort of that old Stephen Covey from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, who says, begin with the end in mind. Habit 1, one of my favorite books there. And habit 1, begin with the end in mind. Think about what is the outcome that you want and what is the impact you want. So, for example, if you're running a young people's program in the Birmingham area and you want to connect with young people, then why go to the expense and lots of mass print advertising to get hold of people, when actually you know that a huge number of young people, I mean, it's even been estimated that 97% of young people are at some point actually in Facebook, and many of them are in there for an average of 40 minutes a day. So if you could actually get a little ad that pops up, or you could do a campaign that was interesting where it would actually drop into people's Facebook news feeds advertising your particular service. And if your service is free, then if you make the advert engaging enough, then people are going to see very clearly your projects there. And what you can do within Facebook is you can narrow it right down to the demographics of the age of the people that you want to see your post and your ad, or you could even go down and say, well, I only want people within a 10-mile radius of, and then put in a particular area. So very, very powerful. If my service was that I was a consultant and I was looking to provide services to other professionals, I would jump in with LinkedIn, and I think that just goes without saying. A LinkedIn is very, very powerful, and there's such a powerful social entrepreneur network within LinkedIn. Everybody's very much networked together. It's a great sounding board to kind of listen in and see what other people are doing, congratulate people as they win contracts and as people move on with their careers, and you'll start to really engage with some of the influential people in the sector. Find out about what's coming next. What's coming next. So let's have a little bit look at this customized strategy and just think about some of the inputs that go into this. So we need to have a think about it, and I think probably, particularly in a small organisation, we need to be thinking about the time investment. And certainly what I do is, when I certainly find time on my hands that I wasn't particularly expecting, then what I'll do is I'll go in and spend that time doing a little bit of extra social media. But once the whole thing is set up and running, you want to be spending about probably no more than about 30 minutes a day actually on maintenance of this work, but it's going to take a lot more to set up. If you are in a particularly competitive niche, or you want to use this to share PR stories and blogs and lots of activity that you're doing, then probably what you want to do in that case is be able to put up a lot of fresh content materials, photos, videos, new articles on your website. So you're going to be investing a lot more time and also your money in this as well. So as you saw with the difference between print media and when it comes to getting the message out, second to word of mouth, this really is very, very cost effective in our experience. But just be aware that what it saves in money, it does actually take sometimes in time as well. And that's why when we've been helping people set up volunteer programs to share their social media, I think people have really found it a great way to share with volunteers, a safe way of communicating online and keeping safe, but also those volunteers are spreading a lot of the great stories that are happening in organisations. So social media is not free. What you need to do is to, once you've decided who your users are going to be, then just say, okay, well, what are we going to use this for? Are we going to use it to share our outcomes? And for you, it might not be financial outcomes. It might be your social outcomes. So when you have a stall at an event, or you're recruiting for people to come and join your project, when you've actually created great work, or the mayor's been to visit, or you've just won an award. What a fantastic way to actually be able to get all of this information out to people that are interested in what you're saying. Ask yourself, is it going to be just another marketing channel where we just push information out? In other words, is it really you just pushing out information about the organisation? Or are you going to use it probably a little bit more effectively, which is to try and use it more for listening to what others are doing and engaging with others, rather than just pushing your own messages out all the time? Now, some of the brave people will use it for real-time customer service as well. So a lot of the train companies have jumped on this one, and what you'll find if you start going onto Twitter, then people are sort of asking about train times and commenting on trains. Not always positive, I have to say, but they're very, very geared up, and they have a very good corporate voice. So they have a number of people who are working, putting these answering these tweets and social media inquiries. All you have to do is to make sure that someone's there. You don't want any kind of customer complaint to be lingering around for hours. So it's a great way of getting people to engage with your service. Obviously, for us as in the counselling part of the business, we don't want to be using it for that. And also, just a word to say that if you are like us, providing a service where people probably don't want to be advertising that they're using the service, then don't be too disheartened if you don't get lots and lots of followers, and particularly if you don't get lots of likes on your Facebook page. So when somebody comes and they say that they like Birmingham Counselling Services, some people might not want to do that because they might think that people might judge them for using the service, maybe. So, and then the final one, just have a look at that part about revenues. Are you actually thinking about, well, what I'm actually doing is using social media as a way of driving income for my business. Okay, so what would you do next? Remember, we'll make sure that you get all these slides if they don't all follow at once. Right, let's just move on. Okay, so where we're going next is talking a little bit about the initial planning of the service. So let's have a little look at that. Oops, went a little bit too far. So we've looked at the users and the channels, looked at the customer service side of it, and what we need to be thinking about now is focus on the people, not the technology. So one thing that's very interesting is I've got two Twitter accounts that are very much about citizen coaching. One is the @citizencoaching and one is @MartinHogg. And what I noticed was that the @MartinHogg one actually grew much quicker because people like to put a face to an organization. So what you might find is that you want to have one Twitter actually in your company name and one actually in the name of the person, particularly if you're a small organization like we are still at the moment, where people tend to get to know the organization through one person, or maybe 2 or 3 people that are the founders of the organization. And then the real key thing, and there's more here on the slides to look at, is about building engagement over time. So you could just use that push effect where you're sending messages out to people, but actually what's much better is to actually engage with people. And when people put their hand up and say they're interested in your service, then take that as a real sort of positive vote and make sure you look to see how you can work with that person. And one of the things we've done very effectively is to try and get those people who are online to find us in the real world. So we've let people know that we're going to be at certain networking events if they want to meet the team. We've let people know if they if there's we can speak to them by phone to see if counselling would be right for them, for example. So all the time we're looking to build that engagement with people. So I'm going to kind of recommend really Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and then either go with my preference is always LinkedIn, but I know that particularly if you have something that's craft based or cooking based, then you'll get a great advantage from using Pinterest for that. But also one of the ways to increase your followers is make sure that everybody knows your Twitter name. So my Twitter name is @MartinHogg or @citizencoaching. So make sure that on all your posters, on your materials, on your financial reports, on the signature of your emails, that you include your Twitter, your LinkedIn, and any Facebook pages that you have as well. So just in that little signature that you can send up or set up on Outlook or others. So promoting that offline means that you'll get people online, and then when you have events which are in the real world, then promote those online. So I know, for example, Birgit at Change Kitchen CIC does a great job of promoting her live events, whether she's out there with a stand doing food sampling or selling food, and then people who know Change Kitchen online can get to know them in real life. And actually when people are there in real life, it's very clear about follow us on Twitter, find us on Facebook, all those things there as well. So that's promoting it. So there's a few more slides that I've included to really sort of help you here, and those have been really about how to focus on implementation and monitoring on your return on investment as well. So this monitoring and measurement is so important, and one of the things I would encourage you to do, if you haven't already got it, is to look at having Google Analytics installed on your website. Now this is a very, very simple couple of lines of code that your webmaster can put on for you, or if you've created your own website, particularly if it's in WordPress, it's a very, very simple copy and paste that you can do. And as soon as this piece of code has been pasted correctly into your website code, then it'll start reporting in a Google dashboard about how people are actually finding you. And what we do very, very clearly is we go on to Google Analytics and we have a look and see how many pages have people visited, where have people come from. So it'll tell you very clearly in there that people saw you on a social enterprise directory, or they came to you from your website, or they actually clicked on your Twitter to come and visit you, and Google Analytics will show you all that. So I've put up, this is a really old version of Google Analytics here, but I've picked it because of the kind of simplicity of it, really. So here we've got a very small screen here, really, is to say, well, on this particular site, as you see in the middle column there, on the number of visits, it's telling you that in this month that's been selected, that this website has had 17,311 visits. So we want to know, well, okay, well, how does that compare to the same period the month before, or the same month last year? We see that the average number of people visited 1.74 pages. We want obviously people to stay on our website and visit as many pages as possible, but actually if your website's job is to get people to contact you, such as with our anger management courses, then you probably want people just to visit a couple of pages and then move on to the sales process. And this next one's very interesting. This is called the bounce rate, and this is one of the measurements that helps you with your search engine optimization, whereby if the bounce rate says that 69% of people that came to this particular website only visited one page and they left. So all the time you want to be making sure that the number of people that visit just one page is smaller. So over time you want to track a reducing bounce rate. So you can see little overviews of visitors, and these days you can really data mine this stuff and you can really find out a lot more about the profiles of people who are visiting and what they're doing. So that's in the Google Analytics, and then what I've included in your pack is just a little bit about Facebook. And you know, the huge number of minutes that people actually spend on Facebook, the growing number of applications, 1 in 8 minutes of all online time is spent on Facebook. It's a huge amount here. We know that the number of people that actually check Facebook before even getting up in the morning. So, and you may be guilty of this yourself. You've only got to visit any restaurant in the country to have a look round, and if it's at Heston Blumenthal's restaurant, there's loads of people taking pictures of the food as it arrives, but if it's in most of the other restaurants, then people are actually sat there eating actually on their phones. So people going out for a romantic meal for two, and no doubt communicating with each other using Facebook Messenger or something as they go through. So quite a few statistics in there, and I think the important thing is that very much the business part of Facebook, setting up a Facebook page for business, is a very, very effective way. You getting your message out, particularly if you've got a crowd of people that use Facebook, and very much when there's a particular cause that's around. I mean, a classic one being Movember, where people grow the little moustache and support the charities around bowel cancer. And if you look at the charity webpage, a decent number of followers. Look at Movember, millions of followers. Where there's a cause that brings people together or an interest, that's very powerful. And of course, a lot of us as social entrepreneurs actually have a cause to solve a social problem or an environmental problem at the heart of what we do, and that's great at getting people involved in that. So here's a little bit here about some of the things to do on Facebook, and no doubt you can follow those as you get the handouts should you wish to do so. So there's a few little strategies here about what to do about creating a Facebook branding, building a targeted profile, and we'll make sure that you have a copy of all these so you can go through at your leisure. I think it's worth saying a little bit about Twitter as well, and again we've included a little how-to guide about Twitter. Now Twitter's very good not just for getting your own information out and retweeting the information of others, but also listening to what's going on, and that very sort of famous hashtag search for hashtag SoCent, SoCent, very much tells you about what's going on in the social enterprise world, and you've only got to do that a couple of times a day, maybe when you're on the bus home or something like that, and in a very short period of time you can really find out about what's going on in the social enterprise community. So in your slides I've put a lot of information there about how to develop an effective Twitter brand and getting all that going, and I think see it very much as a long-term strategy, and there's kind of two ways, particularly with Twitter and LinkedIn, you could go. You could link with absolutely everybody, including lots of spammy people, and it would look good. You'd have lots and lots of people following you, and it would look great. So just be wary that the numbers game in it can sometimes backfire, because the more people you're actually following, is your Twitter feed will move so fast you might actually miss some of the most important things. So we often say with social media that the large numbers are vanity and the small numbers are sanity. So you want to be very much looking at the sort of quality of the followers that you've got and the people you're following, because it's not just about the ego of who's got the most followers, it's about what you're actually doing on Twitter. So we put in little next steps there, so thank you to James and the team for putting that one together for you. And very much I think the future is around YouTube, and it's around video, and I think people's attention spans are becoming so much shorter these days that a video is a great way of getting information across about a project. And one of the things I really liked about the Big Venture Challenge was on the first day, all of the winners, we all got together, and we didn't really get as much chance to talk to each other because there's 30 enterprises there, and you really wanted to find out much about everybody. But what they did was actually created a 2-minute video for everybody, so you can just sit back and just find out all about the enterprises there, and it's been fantastic when we've met again, really to talk to your sort of fellow entrepreneurs and Venture Challenge winners, and just really find out synergies and how you can work together. So we've included some information here again about your YouTube strategies, and if we go through this, I think one of the news stories yesterday was somewhere around there's been in 60 days, that's it, I think it's on there, in 60 days there's more video created on YouTube than the television companies created in 60 years. That's every 60 days, a massive amount of information. So we've got some top tips there for YouTube as well, but the one that often sort of plays second fiddle, I think, to all the ones we've talked about is LinkedIn. And this is the one which I find the most powerful when it comes to our sort of network of counsellors and coaches and professionals. And I would urge those of you, if you haven't already got a LinkedIn profile, to set one up. And I think the single most important thing in LinkedIn is this next part. And if you were to look at my profile here, then you've got Martin Hogg, and I've put their CEO at Birmingham Social Enterprise Citizen Coaching. Those 2 lines that you get there underneath your name, they are actually indexed by Google. So anybody that was looking for Martin Hogg, if you just Googled Martin Hogg, you would very much see my LinkedIn profile on the first page of Google. So when it comes to LinkedIn, even if you just go into your existing profile and change that to be really focused on what you do and what you're getting and what you're currently working on in the future, it'll make a massive difference. So the final one really to talk about is just a little bit about Pinterest. And Pinterest occupies a very interesting space, which means that if you were to reach a female audience, it's the only social media that has very much a bias towards a female audience. So again, if you are looking to engage locally with a female audience, I think Pinterest would be the one that would give you a very interesting return on investment. And if you had a project where there were lots of pictures and video stills and things that people could contribute to, I think you'll find Pinterest is one that you'll get quite a lot of gains from, and there's an awful lot less competition in there as well. So we put some next steps together for Pinterest, and I'm just conscious of time because I promised that we would leave time for some questions. So I'm very interested if any of you have any questions that you can get hold of me on Twitter. It's at Martin Hogg. I'll also, those of you that would like to link in on LinkedIn, it'd be great to hear from you on there. And also, you can just send me an email to martin@citizencoaching.com. So, I hope there's still people out there. And hello, Julie. Are you there?
Thank you, Martin. Yes, I am here. Thank you so much for sharing your top tips and great insights there on various social media platforms. I found that really informative. Yes, we still have a number of people with us, which is great. So if anybody does have any burning questions, anything they'd like to ask of Martin now, if you'd like to go ahead and type those in the chat box, and we can do a bit of a Q&A for a few minutes. Whilst you're doing that, just to remind you that we have recorded today's webinar, and as Martin said, he's prepared a PDF sharing sort of all the top tips of the various social media channels, which he's going to email me later, and then I can email all of you along with the recording. Our next webinar as part of this series is next Tuesday, the 15th of July, which is entitled Social Enterprise, What's Love Got to Do With It? And that is going to be facilitated by Steve Coles from Intentionality, really looking at the role of love in forming social enterprises, the culture of social enterprises, and the impact and value of social enterprises. Steve's going to be sharing some of his insights and research on that, so that should be a good webinar to tune into, and I'll send you the registration link for that as well. So we've already got one question, Martin, which has come through, which is there any general data on the return of investment of different channels for different audiences as a starting point? So is there any general data on return of investment of different channels for different audiences? Have you got any thoughts on that?
I'm not aware of any of any work on that. I think it's going to be very much probably what the question is in there about with the particular audiences. I think where you would find it is probably by specifically looking at sort of Facebook and young people, or be looking at I think Facebook would be the one that has the most data in. So I'm not aware of any kind of official data, and I think people try to keep it to themselves. Social media is such a still relatively new thing, so when people really hit on the formula, they tend to try and keep the information to themselves. So sorry, that's a bit of a rubbish answer, but if you do come across any data sources and you're looking, I'd be delighted to have a look at them as well.
Great, that's fine, thank you. Questions are flowing in here, which is great. So the next question is, how important is it to let community shape your brand with social media advertising? So how important is it to let the community shape your brand with social media advertising?
I think that where a page on Facebook, for example, works incredibly well is when the community very much run it. And I can think of a couple of examples here. One of them is I know some work that we did with Upcycle Birmingham, where Judy and the team that run Upcycle in Castle Vale really have involved the whole community whenever new items come in for sale. And what you're doing there is you're very much getting in the buy-in for people, and then once people are members of a very active page, they will protect the page. James manages a page which has got 98,000 followers, so you can imagine the potential for people to be sending abusive messages to each other, or the nature of the page could change very easily. But what actually happens is that the community really value that page, and you'll find this with the sports related and other community pages, and people will actually police it for you, and they'll flag up anybody who isn't isn't following the rules properly. So by actually getting the community involved, so if you're putting the page together with young people, then I think to actually have the young people there to shape it right from day one, or you're working with a group of adults to actually get them there to be talking about, well, what should we say, what pages should we use, what images would attract you to join this group. Very, very important part. Very important part of it.
Thank you. And we've got another question about LinkedIn here. In your opinion, is there any point in upgrading to a premium account? And have you had success with LinkedIn advertising campaigns?
What I would say is that the LinkedIn premium accounts are very much based on people who are job hunting, and for the more expensive packages are really for recruiters being able to drill down through as many CV type profiles as they can. So it's mainly geared to that. Now what I've done on my personal profile, I pay I think it's $6.99 a month for the enhanced personal profile, and I'm currently working on that, and the third month into it. And what it really does is enables you to send more of those in mails, so it allows you to send messages to people you might not be connected with, and more importantly, actually shows you a much more detailed list of those people that have had a look at your profile. So at the moment, as a business that as we're growing and we're looking to build relations with social investors and other social enterprises, when someone's actually coming and looking at my profile, that's quite good to have a look. Of course, if people haven't got that facility switched off to keep themselves anonymous, but it's very interesting to see who's visited your profile. But I have to say, at the end of that 3 months, I'm not so sure. I wouldn't spend the money on it. I think it's more to effectively do a profile, make sure that headline's on like I discussed. I think I would do that. The ads work well, but there's not enough people in the niche in Britain sometimes. So if you were looking for example, in our situation, counsellors in the West Midlands to put an advert in front of in LinkedIn. So in other words, if you were a counsellor or psychotherapist in the West Midlands, when you log on to LinkedIn, you'd see our ad. There's not enough of them to make a group that of 1,000 that LinkedIn, you need a minimum, I think, to actually promote to. So we've had not as much success with LinkedIn adverts locally. When you're looking to a group nationally, so if I was advertising to counsellors nationally about the conference, then it has been very, very effective, and I'd say we'd had our money back on that.
Great. And one more question. Have you got any tips for collaborating with other companies on joint social media marketing campaigns? So for example, have you collaborated with any other counselling services on anything at all?
There's a great thing in Twitter called Follow Friday, which is where people put out a tweet with the hashtag FF and then sort of name check those other social enterprises that they've either worked with that week or have followed them that week. And that's a great way just to engage with people while they're still they've recently joined you. We're very much about sort of sharing what we do, so we've worked with other social enterprises to promote their courses and services through our Twitter account, and they've done the same for us. So when we had this conference, it was quite an effective way of getting the message out. And when we had the speakers at our conference, Terry and Heather and Mark from Cloudberry, then those speakers then used their platform that they to say that they were speaking at the event, so that some of their followers could come and join it. So I think that's the way that I would do it.
Great. Okay, that's really, really helpful. Thank you, Martin, and thanks for answering all those questions. If people have any further questions, then don't hesitate to get in touch. Martin shared his contact details, or you could find him on any social media platform. And you've also got my...
shameless, I think.
Yeah, you've also got my email address, and I'm at Julie Nicholson on Twitter, if you'd like to follow me. I'll just do a little plug. So, like I said, we've recorded today's webinar, and we will also be able to send out the PDF handout later on today. So that brings us to the end of today's webinar. So I just want to say huge thank you to Martin. Really, really insightful, really useful, and quite a lot of messages coming through saying thank you as well on the thank you board. So just to acknowledge that. Hope everybody's found it interesting and valuable, and hope you can join us for our next webinar. So have a great day. Thanks, Martin. Thanks, everybody else, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye.